So this evening, we have the pleasure of having Conchetta joining us from Headway, the charity. And I just want to share with you a little bit about Conchetta, who is the Headway approved provider and training manager. She has a robust foundation in both neuropsychology and neuroscience, and is passionate and dedicated neurorehabilitation specialist. Her journey spans over a decade, evolving from Italy to the UK, and she specialises in both inpatient and outpatient settings, offering a compassionate and person-centred approach to neurorehabilitation. She's responsible for assessing and accrediting services specialising in neurorehabilitation and creating and delivering training content. So, as well as if you don't know about Headway is the charity for acquired head injuries. And one of the main reasons we reached out to them is because we understand that there's a distinct difference around neurological fatigue. And as you may be aware, there hasn't been that much research in cerebral palsy in adults regarding fatigue. So we felt that it would be a very appropriate thing to go to Headway and hear what they have to say. So Conchetta, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited about sharing a little bit about fatigue. I am going to share my screen. Just let me know if... Ooh. Oh, way too many windows open at once, which never helps. Sorry. It's just not letting me. Here you go. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so I don't know if you prefer to ask a question along the way or if you prefer to ask a question at the end. Everything really works for me, so whatever really you feel more comfortable with. So I wanted to really use a title for this presentation that really gave us an understanding of what fatigue really is, because very often people tend to associate fatigue with the concept of feeling tired, but actually it's a little bit more complicated than that. So what I wanted to touch on today, it's just having a little bit of an overview, trying to have a kind of a definition of what fatigue is, what are the impact on CP patients, and I wanted to end with some maybe little tips that you can maybe consider to use moving forward to help you manage your fatigue levels. Now, if we look at an overview, why it's important to understand and talk about fatigue? Well, first of all, fatigue is something that is frequently reported in patients that have a diagnosis of CP. But even though it's very frequently reported, there are very, very few studies that are looking at this issue. It was very difficult for me to find studies, research that have been looking at fatigue within cerebral palsy. But why is so important to talk about this and to understand this concept? Because fatigue has a direct impact on quality of life, which is the main element where all the rehab, all the therapies are really aimed at. The concept of quality of life is that we want for every patient, regardless of the problem and the diagnosis, to reach and live the best and highest quality of life possible. Basically, we want you to be happy. So if you feel fatigue, and if fatigue is actually affecting your ability to, go back to education, to participate socially, you have a negative impact on the quality of your life. And also because what we want to do is trying to have a more proactive approach in understanding, recognizing fatigue, and also understanding how we can manage fatigue better in our life, because there are some management strategies that we can use. And I will share some of them at the end of this very short presentation, so don't worry about it. So fatigue then it's definitely more than just tiredness. How can we define it? Well, some researchers, some people consider fatigue as a multifactorial symptoms. What does it mean? It means that actually, when you look at fatigue, it's a concept where you have a subjective experience, which is your own personal experience of fatigue, which is very different from everyone else's. And the subject experience of fatigue, it's when you refer to, feeling tired, or sometimes people really said, I'm actually feeling exhausted, and the overall feeling of lacking energy. But also an objective experience, which means, for example, the loss of strength that you have when you are completing an exercise. That's very objective. I can see that the more tired, the more fatigue you get, the less strength you have in completing the exercise. When we look at fatigue, what is important also to think of is that fatigue, as a very multi-complex factor, can be distinguished in physical, cognitive, and emotional fatigue. General, everyone in their life experience fatigue, regardless if they have a brain injury or cerebral palsy or any other neurological condition. But there is a difference between what we define and what we call normal fatigue, because normal fatigue is time limited and it's alleviated by rest. But pathological fatigue, it's a type of fatigue that it's usually present most of the time, and it tends not necessarily to improve, even if I have rest. Sometimes, for example, if I use some of the survivors, brain injury survivors I worked with, some of them, they will wake up in the morning and they will say to me, actually, I had slept all night, but I feel like I have just 5% of energy to actually deal with all the things I need to do or that I want to do today. So there are different types of fatigue. And there are also other elements that can fuel our level of fatigue and deplete our energy levels. So if you think about any medical condition that you might have, let's say that you suffer of, I don't know, it could be chronic pain, or if you take any, some medication will impact directly on your energy levels. Mood, a lot of research has been done around that, and we know that when you present with very low mood or high level of anxiety, this tends to affect your energy level. Sleep, you had someone talking about sleep. You know that sleep is essential, for our energy level, for the way we function in our daily lives. So if you go to bed very late and you need to wake up very early, so you didn't have enough rest during the night, of course, you're going to feel fatigue, and this will impact your ability to actually function during the day. Or if you had a restless night as well. So again, this will impact the ability that you have, for example, to concentrate and to complete and perform during the day. Diet, interestingly enough, if you, for example, like a very highly processed food, that will impact your digestive system, which will require much more time to process the food and will impact your energy levels and fatigue. And environment, the more overwhelming, the more noisy and crowded the environment where you are is, the more tired you will feel. And this is because what happens is you need to focus and pay attention to so many things at the same time. And so the brain that is trying to really process all this information will try to do everything at once. And therefore, it will use much more energy. And so you will feel more tired in an environment like this, so when you need to complete or perform a particular task. What I tend to use as an example, as a metaphor, really to explain the concept of fatigue, I associate fatigue to the battery of a smartphone. If you think about it, a new smartphone usually can go on for a couple of days without the need of being recharged. But the more you use it, the more app you download, and especially when you use a particular type of apps that require a lot of battery, you will see that the life of the battery of your phone will tends to be to require more recharging, maybe once a day or sometimes even more than once a day. The same things happen with our fatigue and our brain. So the more we get, the more things we do, the more breaks we might need, the more rest we might need before actually being able to perform another task. What I was curious about, because this is a very new area for me, what I was curious about was looking at the impact of fatigue on patients with cerebral palsy. And I was very, very puzzled because I didn't find much studies out there. And that explained to me why this is so important and why more awareness is needed. So I am going to discuss 3 studies here that I found. I will share I will share the references if some of you it's interested to know a little bit more about this. But one study was looking at adults with cerebral palsy, and they wanted to look at fatigue. So 61% of participants said that they actually had difficulties with fatigues, and 42 reported severe fatigue at the level that was impacting, their ability to actually engage in activity of their daily lives. It's really important. And again, it links to what we mentioned before around quality of life. Another studies with adults, again, reported that 30% of their participants reported severe fatigue. So it's a type of fatigue that's very debilitating, both for unilateral and bilateral CP patients. And then I was curious about, okay, let's look at other studies with children. And unfortunately, there aren't really many data around fatigue studies with children with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. So absolutely, it's essential the work the app movement is doing, because we need more information about this, and we need more recognition in terms of what are the difficulties that you are experiencing daily because of cerebral palsy, so that more can be done. What I would like to do, if you're happy with that, is to share a little video. It's about our brain injury survivors, but what the main point of this video is showing you how fatigue can be debilitating and how can actually impact everyone's day life. And then we will talk a little bit about what we can actually do to mitigate the effect of fatigue and to handle and manage fatigue level a little bit better. Is everyone happy for me to share this video? Yeah? Sorry, I cannot see everyone, sorry. Is it okay for me to share video?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Concetta.
It's all right. Let me know if you have any problem with the audio.
Hi, I'm Belinda, and I had a stroke almost 4 years ago, and this is my brain drain fatigue diary. There are a lot of different warning signs that I get with fatigue, and one of those is tingling. Sometimes I get it in my hands, and other times I get it across here and in my face, and that's what I've been getting just now, because I've been doing some reading and writing this morning, which I've done a bit at a time and rested in a bit at a time, but when I've done too much, that's when this tingling starts across here and this burning sensation, and I know then that I need to stop what I'm doing and rest, because if I don't, that tingling, it just spreads and spreads and spreads and becomes more and more intense, and eventually I end up shutting down. I'm going out today. I'm going to the town on the train with my mum. So I rested yesterday and a bit the day before so that I could go today. My fatigue takes a lot of planning and a lot of pacing, and I've got ready this morning in stages. I do a bit and I rest a bit, and I do a bit and I rest a bit, so that I'm okay by the time I go. I've not worn myself out before I go. Got my trusty earplugs to block out sound, which has a big impact. All the sensory stuff has a big impact on my fatigue, so these I wear them whenever I go out. They block out a lot of noise, which allows me just to last that bit longer. So we'll see how I go today.
Okay, Belinda, how do you feel now?
Slow. My mouth feels heavy. My eyes feel heavy. My hand feels So a couple of friends are taking me out for tea today, so I've rested today and I've saved my speech. That's conversation is something that still tires me a lot, some days more than others, which is why if I know that I'm going to be involved in conversation, I do rest, literally save my voice, which can sometimes get quite strained with fatigue, and also just so that I can keep up with it.
So Belinda, you've been sat out with your friends outside in the sunshine.
Yeah.
And you've been out for maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? I can see a big difference in the last, say, quarter of an hour.
Yeah.
How you've got to look so tired.
Yeah. It's blurry.
So I wanted to share this video because I think it's a really, really good representation of how fatigue may actually look like. And so Belinda really recorded herself before and after an activity. And you can spot all the signs of fatigue in Belinda. And what I like about this video is that she shared a little bit of the strategies that she needs to use in order to protect herself and to manage her fatigue. So if we look at some signs of fatigue, these are the common ones. But what is interesting about fatigue is that really it's very personal to you. You will need to learn what fatigue means to you. So yawning, losing concentration, the feeling the eye heavy or blurring eyesight, or you feel your head fuzzy, the fact that you started to get a little bit irritable, very fidgety, or you feel your limbs feeling heavy, or sometimes it can also be related to the stomach, so you start to feel a little bit sick. These are just the most common, as I mentioned before. There can be so many that are really personal to you. But because we don't want to understand only what fatigue is, how it might look like, we also would like some actual concrete, simple strategies so that we can make our life a little bit better. So, as I mentioned before, it's important that you know your own fatigue. So understand what fatigue means to you, how it impacts your life and the goals that you want to achieve. And once you know how fatigue looks like for you, explain it to others so that people that are around you, your safety net of people, parents, partners, best friends, carers as well, can actually help you to recognize the signs. And sometimes we might not necessarily recognize some of these signs, and other people that are close to us can actually observe some of the behavior, some of the difficulties that we might have, and maybe help us to understand the other signs that we didn't recognize before. And it's really important that you understand that you will need to take breaks when you do tasks during your day. So the one that you see here in these two pictures, these are two helpful examples that you can actually implement very easily in your life to start to know and observe a little bit more yourself. So the first one, it's a fatigue diary. And basically the concept is to understand how much energy activities may actually require of you. So you write the start and the finish time for each activities and what activities you have completed, and then how tired you felt or how energetic you felt before you started the activity, and how tired you feel afterwards, and what's the difference between these two numbers. And then consider also all the elements, all the other external factors that actually could have impacted in the way you perform, whether maybe you were feeling hungry or you had headache, or maybe you didn't sleep very well the night before. If you do this fatigue diary consistently every day for a few weeks, it will give you a really, really good overview of your own particular type of fatigue and what activities or time of during the day you actually have this drop on energy levels. And those are the moments where you actually need to implement a break. What I really want to highlight about breaks is that it doesn't mean that you need to go and sleep. Break can be anything. It can be doing meditation, breathing exercises. It can be just closing your eyes and having some music in the background, something that actually helps you to feel re-energized to, continue with your day. And then the second one, it's about understanding your triggers. What really makes you tired? So there are different types of activities. The one that you can see here are mainly related to personal care, but there are others listed. And the idea is understanding which type of energy did you use in order to complete that task. Was it physical? Was it mental? Was it emotional energy? As we mentioned before, fatigue, it's related to physical, cognitive, and emotional. So again, this is very important to understand which type of energy are you tapping in when you are completing specific tasks. Again, if you do these quite consistently, you will have a really, really good knowledge about yourself and when you feel fatigue and what makes you feel more fatigue. One interesting strategy, it's called the 3 Ps strategy. Now, this is about planning, placing, and prioritizing. What does it mean? Planning means that you will really need to be quite realistic in the things that you want to plan in your day or your week. Some people, I like to plan even the month. And when you plan things, it's important that you don't think about only at the things that you have to do, but also things that you really, really enjoy to do, because those are the activities that actually take less of us, of our energy, and actually makes us feel even more energized and more motivated to keep going with the day. So make sure that you plan things that you like as well. Also, when you start planning the day, acknowledge the fact that you may not be able to do as much as you were doing before, and that's absolutely fine. Pacing, it's all about making sure that you add breaks during the day, more than one or whatever you need. And prioritizing, this is learning the art of delegation. My partner will be perfect at that. So it's things that you have to do, and that you will need to consider things that you cannot delegate to others, things that you would like to do if you had energy, things that actually you can delegate to others so that you can actually preserve your energy levels to do all the things that you have to, you want to, and things that can be done if you actually still had some energy left for the day. And this is how these 3 P strategies in practice may actually look like. The idea is that you allocate points to each activity. So let's say that you imagine that for the whole day, you have, I don't know, 250 points. And you need to share these points amongst all the activities that you actually need to complete. You need to be very realistic about that. You also need to be very understandable of the fact that one activity, let's say taking shower today, might take 5 points out of your energy levels because you maybe had a really good night of sleep. But tomorrow, if tonight you're not going to sleep very well, taking shower might require more energy. So it doesn't mean that one activity it's always requiring the same energy levels. And this is how we learn to really observe ourselves and, you know, and learn about our own particular type of fatigue. It's important that you are also very caring with yourself. Fatigue impacts the way you engage with people in social contexts, and you may feel like sometimes you know, when people are not able to complete the things that they've planned for the day, they may have negative feelings around, oh, you know, actually I'm useless, or why I wasn't able to do that. But instead, my suggestion is, instead of looking at the 1 or 2 things that you were not able to do on that day, look at all the things that you actually have achieved during your day, because that it's the positive out of it. And if today you didn't do those 2 things, that's fine. There is still time tomorrow to be able to do that. And this is why, by using these strategies and by prioritizing the things that really are essential for you to do on that day, you make sure that you can control and manage a little bit more this negative feeling, but really be very caring with yourself, because it's not easy, and it will take time. But when you learn to understand some of the signs of when you're feeling tired, and you acknowledge that, and you take a break, and so that you can go on with the day, you will see a huge difference in yourself and in your quality of life. So that's really all for me. I'm not sure. I will just stop share so that I can see everyone. I'm not sure if there are any question or any curiosity.
Thank you so much for that, Concetta. It was absolutely fascinating.
I hope
And some of it,
helpful.
pardon?
I hope it was helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think some of it makes perfect sense, and it's almost common sense, but some of it, I think the techniques are it's very useful to have those structures if you're going to try and explore how you can implement
Absolutely.
small bits at a time.
Yeah.
And
I
was just thinking, if anyone...
Sorry, I was just saying that I will share with you these fact sheets from this book, from where I took these tables that I usually suggest to all the people I work with. So if anyone is interested to trial, they have some sort of template to refer back to.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I didn't know if anyone wants to share some of the symptoms or things that they experience when they have fatigue, because obviously the lady that you showed in the video, like you said, it was visually very obvious from her point of view with the mouth control, and she told us about the sensory stuff, and like you said, it's very different for everybody.
Yes.
I didn't know if anyone here wants to share any of their things that they feel when they're fatigued.
When I feel fatigued, I feel like I get things wrong, or I get a bit silly with my actions. I'll go in the water and now I'm looking at where I'm tired, I'm not aware of what I'm doing.
When you're
So when
tired,
you're
aware. Sorry, yeah, go on.
No, that's okay. So what you were saying, Abby, is that well, you said in the chat that your mum often says things like that to you, but when you're tired, you're not aware that you're getting tired.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
It's interesting because I share that experience, Abby, too. And it's really interesting that you shared that we need to get more self-aware, because as you were reading through the list, I was thinking, I have started lately to realize that when I'm really tired, I start to feel sick, or I start to feel like I've got a sore throat, like I'm getting a cold, but actually it's just really fatigued. And that you also shared that it's pins and needles, which I often say, oh, I'm having a bad day because I've got pins and needles. But when I think about it, it's because I'm really, really tired. That's when I get the. So that was really fascinating. Abby, have you noticed some things specifically?
I do not more being or I feel more or oh right go to the bathroom more there that I can do anyway, but I'll go over and like what am I going over?
Yeah.
And I do this all the time.
I guess the falling over makes a little bit of sense in terms of, in order to move around, you need energy, and when you've got lacking in energy, it's harder to do. Does anybody have any other different symptoms to Abby? I feel like a school teacher again. Somebody's just shared in the chat. So Lisa's saying that her speech is worse, and carrying things becomes much, much harder. I'm very impressed that you can carry the coffee at all. I'm not allowed to do that in my house. So yeah, I can imagine that's an issue. Dean, you've got your hand up too.
Yes, hello there. I find that sometimes if I'm doing, not all of the time, but if I'm working on a task that requires a lot of concentration, I tend to lose concentration quite quickly and then feel quite fatigued. And say if it's something I've got to read, for example, because I sit on appeal panels and things like that, and there's a lot of information and there's a lot going through my mind as I'm reading it. And but not just that, but yeah, it's that. So as I say, you know, sometimes, as I say, you know, reading things and keeping that concentration. But I guess that's, in some ways, that affects everybody. It's not just people with cerebral palsy. It can affect everybody because, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dean. Because this brings another little tricks that you can use. First of all, if you are reading through a laptop, just be aware that that requires much more concentration levels. Human brains was not supposed to use laptops, so it requires much more of our energy. So be aware of that. And the other thing is, if you you need to complete a task, wherever tasks that require concentration on your side, make sure that you take that you kind of break down this task in smaller bits, which allows you then to take a little bit of a rest, but don't feel guilty about the fact that you didn't complete that task, because you actually have planned for the little bit of break. It could be anything. It could be even just, you know, stretching a little bit, or taking your eyes away from the laptop a little bit as well. It can be as little as 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be, 1 hour of your time. But if you focus on something for 30, 45 minutes, make sure that you use a 10 minutes break so that you can also relax a little bit your eyes, especially if you're working on a laptop, because that impacts even more your concentration levels. And by breaking down a task in smaller bits, you also still have the sense of achievement, because you are completing the first step, then you take a break, and then you go to the next step, and that's done. I don't know if you ever tried this, but give it a try, and maybe if you use a planner, put the break in your planner so that you know that is non-negotiable. It's part of the day, and it's part of your task to take actually a break.
Yeah, I mean, I used to for my landlord, I used to work on a procurement panel, and we used to just work on one thing at a time.
Yes.
And there was quite a lot going on. I mean, you used to have to, before this was pre-lockdown, and you used to have to go to the office and this, that, and the other. But then they started doing different things on block, and I just found it, actually during lockdown, we found that too hard. So I thought I'll just go away from that and just concentrate on the customer appeal panel. But yeah, it's very interesting what you say. I mean, one thing that I do is on my phone, which I read most of the information off. I have the resolution, the resolution down quite a lot, so it's not, so you don't get that glare, from always looking at the screen, like you mentioned there. So yeah.
And absolutely, try to don't multitask. Human brain is not good at multitasking. That's a myth. So if you do a task, maybe delegate, I don't know, 1 hour, 1 and a half to that task, and then divide that 1 hour and a half in 45 minutes so that you can have 10 minutes break in between. And then once you finish with this 1 hour and a half of this particular task, maybe have a longer break, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then start a new one, so that you're not overloading yourself with too many information about different things. And at the same time, you don't build anxiety around, oh, I'm not going to reach that deadline, I'm not going to be able to finish what I was supposed to do, because sometimes we set up a very unrealistic expectation for ourselves and what we can actually achieve in a day. So it's also about that.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I will do some of that, because sometimes you feel a bit guilty, like say if I have, like, say, taking breaks even. You think, oh well, really, you should get on with it. But I'm going to take your advice anyway and take those breaks. Thank you very much.
I'm glad. My pleasure, Dean.
We've had some great comments in the chat as well. I'm going to just read a few. So we've got from Beth: thank you for reinforcing everything. It makes me feel better to know others have the same symptoms. I can completely identify with both the voice overload and also hearing overload. I wear hearing aids, and in a university lecture, I'm lip reading, listening to the sound from a sound loop on my hearing aids, trying to watch the presentation, and come out of a 2-hour lecture, I feel completely head frazzled and physically worn. And Lisa speaks about the speech being much worse with her dystonia. Abby's added that she also gets headaches if she's quite tired. And Chris, you talked about, I've always thought I suffered from executive dysfunction. I couldn't concentrate on a task, but it feels a lot of the time that this is probably fatigue.
Oh, this is
about that one, Concetta.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. This is actually a bit of both, Chris. And this is because when you have executive dysfunction, you struggle with the whole concept of planning, organizing. And when I mean planning, I mean any task that require more than one action, more than one step. So think about making yourself a cup of coffee. You have a sequencing of steps that you need to do. and you might struggle in the sequencing of that. Fatigue definitely doesn't help with executive dysfunction. If you want, Chris, I can send to Miriam something around executive dysfunction. If you want to read a little bit more, we have some fact sheets in our website, and I can send it to Miriam just to share with you, with anyone might actually be interested in this a little bit more. But executive dysfunction will make your planning organization a little bit harder, so you might need a little bit of help with that.
And Chris replied, he's always up for reading more. So I think that was a resounding yes.
Sure.
There was quite a lot of entertainment in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, about people being jumpy. And Lisa, you're very funny, saying that you'd even jump with an ant sneeze. So and then Chris added that it's only one side, so it's probably a half jump. So, but then Becky, did you want to come in with what you said? Where are you, Becky? Oh, she's off screen.
Sorry, I'm trying not to do two things at once because I'm writing another message. So maybe you should read that, Miriam.
I will read that for you, not a problem at all. So Becky says that her coordination is one of the first things to go. She'll stop processing things people say to her and be several sentences behind on the reply, even several minutes after the response, by which time the conversation's moved on. And that the conversation's interrupted her train of thought.
Yeah, that's really not surprising, because again, when what happens is that when you feel when you start to have signs of fatigue, your brain it's slower in the way it's processing the information, and we take all of these things for granted. But actually, having a conversation with someone requires a lot of cognitive skills, because first of all, well, you need to concentrate. Then you need to actually listening to that person, understanding what that person is saying, so decoding this information, and then think about what you want to say and actually tell your brain to move the muscle so that you can say the words that you want to say. So there are so many things involved in this whole process, and if you feel tired and you start to have your processing, it's much slower, this whole process will require much longer. So don't be too hard on yourself on that. My suggestion is trying to learn a little bit more about what trigger your fatigue, and trying to avoid to reach the stage where you actually really are not going to be able to cope anymore. So ideally, you want to be proactive. You want to avoid this stage so that you can take the breaks before, rest a little bit, so that you're always able to engage with the situation, the task, or the environment where you're in. It's not always possible, because sometimes you cannot control elements in the environment. So if you're out and about, and this is where the planning will be really helpful. If you know that you have a very big social event in the next couple of days, the idea is that you take it easy the 2 days before, so that you can actually have enough energy, plenty of energy to kind of deal with this huge social event, so that you can enjoy the event, enjoy the conversation with people. And sometimes even during the event, I'll share with you something that a brain injury survivor does. What he does, what I find very helpful is, even if it's commuting back home from work, he will sit down. It doesn't matter if there aren't seats available. He will even sit on the floor, and he will just close his eyes, because by removing the visual information coming to his brain, he finds this very, very helpful to regenerate his energy levels. So this is his strategies. Wherever he is, he will find a place where he can actually shut his eyes for a few minutes so that he can feel a little bit better. So this is why understanding your fatigue and what fatigue means to you will help you find that particular strategies that actually help you even when you are out and about. So if you are in a social event, you might just go in a quiet place, whether even if it's, you know, the bathroom, just go there, you sit 10 minutes so that you can kind of recharge yourself, and then you go on with what you were doing.
That's fascinating and very, very good advice to try out in these situations. Emma, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question because it's fascinating actually, because I just had this conversation with my children in that I can tolerate noise in the morning. So if breakfast is chaotic but even this evening I said, please just everyone just stop talking at the same time, because I can't do that. Like it feels overwhelming. And it just made me think that are there particular times of the day, because I know that I can function much better in the morning, so I'm much more of a and then relating it back to the sleep talk last week, that I'm very much an early bird and I can get things done in the morning, but come 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all of those things, that overwhelming sensation and then impact on my mood happens. And I just wondered, is it a regular experience that most people are morning people because that's when you've just woken up and you've got more energy, or do people have different patterns throughout the day that you have to acknowledge? I don't know if that's a silly question, but
no, it's not. Absolutely, it's not. Because instinctively we would think, well, we have rested all night, so in the morning we should feel very energized and ready, you know, to conquer the world. But actually not. It's a very personal experience. I had a patient that actually really wasn't able to cope in the morning. It really took him quite a long time to actually being able to engage, even though, you know, he had these 7-8 hours sleep at night. And also, generally, you tend to feel more fatigued, more tired, you know, during the day, towards the end of the day, especially if you didn't have any breaks or rest in the middle of your day. So it doesn't surprise me that at the end of the day, you feel completely shattered. And some of the words that people use, it's also, I feel bombarded, because you are tired. Your brain is, you know, it's slower in processing information. And you have all these things, feeling like all these things are coming at you, all these questions and requests and things that you have to do and things that you need to pay attention to. So I can only imagine how hard that kind of context might be, and you know how irritable and someone can become, or anxious about not being able to actually perform or to complete the things that they wanted to do. So again, everything goes back on the planning. So if you have noticed that at the end you function much better during the morning, I would do the things that are essential and crucial at the beginning of the day, because it's where you have more energy left, where you have more energy available. But then could still consider to take, maybe for you, it will work a longer break instead of small bits of breaks throughout the day. A longer break maybe during lunchtime, so that you can kind of recover a little bit and last a little bit longer in the evening. Especially if you know that maybe dinner time it's particularly chaotic because of kids and, you know, handling many people and many things at the same time. So if you plan for it, it's just finding what works best for you. If it works best to have a longer break, maybe during the lunch time, or if you work best in having little bits of breaks before. And I would suggest that if you find that, you know, the dinner time particularly overwhelming, maybe do something just before that particular task that you really enjoy, that it's really, really pleasurable, that gives you, you know, that spark and, you know, sense of fulfillment and motivation, and, you know, it makes you feel energized, so that you can kind of face the more complex task or the more demanding task, not only with more energy, but also, you know, with better spirit in a way. I don't know if this is something
That's
that
really,
before.
that's really helpful. I wanted to ask a question that we get asked a lot here at the charity, and that is, I understand, or not asked, kind of challenged, maybe in the nicest possible way, that particularly with people who are slightly younger, who want to keep up with social lives and, you know, and who want to be part of things.
Yeah.
This idea of pacing and having to decide which thing I'm going to go to. So if I need to take a rest day because I know that the day before I was really busy, or when you plan that, you know that you have to have, and I know certainly when I was in my early 20s and working, and, you know, I didn't want to have to make the choice between whether I went out during the day or whether I went out in the evening, or more significantly, whether I went to work during the day or I socialized in the evening. And I guess I just wondered your experience of working with people with neurological fatigue and the emotional impact of that, whether you could talk a bit about your experience with that and how you support somebody who is struggling with knowing that that's what they should do, but that's not what they want to do.
So this is why fatigue is something that we really stress a lot in terms of awareness, even during our training session, because I think that people don't really get it. People think, well, okay, you're just tired. That's fine. Just have a nap, take a break, and, you know, get on with the things that you need to do. But it's so much more than that. And when I said that impacts on the quality of your life, this is what I actually mean. So the example that I usually use with people is, imagine if now, like right now, I will take away the possibility of you being spontaneous in your life about any decision that you want to make. So let's say that you have work all day and you receive a call from a friend and they ask you, oh, would you like to go and grab a drink? And you are not able to because you are tired and you didn't plan for it, and you should have known at least the day before, so that, you know, you could have planned your day differently. So it has a huge emotional and psychological impact on people that struggle with fatigue management. But in the end of the day, I think that the question is, do I want to do all the things for the sake of doing all the things, or do I want to do things and enjoy them? Because that's ultimately is the difference. You can go and do 5 things out of 5, but then it means that you will probably not be able to engage. You'll get frustrated with yourself, with other people. You will probably get anxious, and so you will associate some of particular social events with anxiety. And what could happen in the long term is actually avoidance in the future, because you are anxious about, okay, how am I going to perform in this particular context, and maybe not going anymore, which is going to impact on, you know, more social isolation in the longer term as well. So I think it's about being very realistic about what is possible to be done. I did say that we need to be very honest with ourselves before about, I might not be able to do all the things that I was doing before. It doesn't mean that you cannot do them all. You might need to do them in 2 or 3 days instead of having all cranked in one, but you can still do them. So instead of not doing it at all, you just do it in a different way. And the same is with brain injury. It's not that you cannot do the same things that you were doing before. You just need to find the different ways and find new strategies that works for you now after a brain injury, in order to do the things that you really enjoy, so that you can still be happy in your life, you can still be satisfied and fulfilled. But at the same time, you're also taking care of yourself and your well-being, because that's paramount at the end of the day. No problem.
Couldn't put it better myself. Thank you very much for that.
I'm just going to have a look at the chat just to mention a few other things as well, because Abby and Julia and a couple of other people have talked about that they feel forgetful when they're tired. when they're fatigued. Julia also said you feel overloaded if the routine changes, and that affects the fatigue quite a lot. And then Becky, you said a really interesting thing as well, which is that she finds it interesting that at work, different people around her can be better or worse at spotting the signs of fatigue, regardless of how long they've worked with her. So some folks just seem more tuned in to being able to recognize fatigue than others. What, as a
That's
as
very
a person
interesting.
that observes people, what's your thought on that?
That's very interesting. I think it might be due to the fact that it could be related to maybe two different aspects. Especially if we talk about carers, you know, they have a list of things that they need to have done at the end of the day. So sometimes what happens when, you know, in this type of work is that you are more focused on the task that you need to do, and sometimes the person is not necessarily the focus of the whole care. And it's not in a bad way, it's just that it's a very demanding job. So sometimes you want to make sure that you do all the things and not necessarily spot or observe really, really carefully the person that you're working with, whether they are tired or comfortable or not. It could also be due to the fact that maybe people are not necessarily that educated and aware about fatigue. And so that it's something that maybe that should be trained on. But if you have this difficulty, as I mentioned before, one of the things is say to people, explain to the people around you what does it mean fatigue for you and how does it look like, so that they can be more tuned in the future to actually being able to spot the things, and they might also able to plan things accordingly you know, to your fatigue levels, because they started to know you better. Not everyone is a great observer, so definitely if you have noticed that, I would definitely speak up. And maybe you can actually I don't know if your carers are through a care agency, but you can maybe have a little training session around your own fatigue with, you know, all your carers, and explain, you know, this is fatigue. For me, this is how I look like, and these are the time of the day where I am more tired, so this is where I will need a break. But if you spot these particular signs and behaviors, it means that I'm getting tired. So sometimes I don't notice myself. So if you spot them, just let me know so that I can actually have a break. So it could be a great opportunity for them to know you a little bit better. Sorry, Mira, you're mute.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying thank you for that. That was very good thought processing as to how you can communicate that with people around you. Dean, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Miriam. I just I'm a member of an organisation which is for people with disabilities, and they and all the staff have disabilities, and some full time, some part time. But the one thing in terms of working hours, you can steady your working hours according to your, say, like if you're having a good day or a bad day, for example, and you can compress your working hours. It doesn't, as long as the work is done because obviously in the given, then they're not bothered about when it's done as long as it's done. And I've always thought that's a really, really positive thing, because because we don't all, generally, even without disabilities, everyone's different. But if you have impairments and so forth, these can be added things that can add to your fatigue. And I always thought it's interesting how the staff have that flexibility of kind of, how can I put it, kind of, staggering their working week, which is quite liberating, really, I've always thought.
Absolutely, and there are so many studies that actually agree with what you just mentioned. We are all different, and it has been shown that flexible hours makes people more productive, happier, and definitely healthier in terms of mental health and well-being. So I guess that's one of the few positive after the pandemic that we can all take. Really, because we all discover, you know, the smart working, the flexible working. So absolutely, that's something that can really help. About the person that said in the comment that they get more forgetful. These happen because you are fatigued. The way your brain is not processing the information, it's slower, and also you might not process all the information correctly, which means that some of the steps that usually are required in the memory system may be skipped. And this is why you might not retain the information and get more forgetful, which shows how fatigue really impacts every aspect of our cognitive functioning. So if we are tired, we tend to kind of perform bad, whether it's, you know, for a cognitive task, but also in a physical task, because we might have less strength, for example. But even emotionally, we get more irritable, more frustrated, more anxious, or presenting low mood. So definitely try to take breaks, take care of yourself, and rest, because you will see the benefit overall in different aspects of your life.
I'd just like to explore something that Georgia put in the chat. Georgia, you said that when your eyes, you get that when your eyes are affected because of the CBI, but also and you become very sleepy. I'm just curious, Georgia, is it when you're using your eyes to read a lot, or is it just when you're being very busy, that's how it physically affects you?
No, it's not when I'm reading. It's CBI. My eyes are fine in the morning, but because of my eye condition, they get worse over time. So I notice that when that happens, I get more tired. It was just an observation, really.
And if you rest, have you found a tactic to help with that? Because you said at the beginning your eyes are fine, and then
Yeah. There isn't really anything you can do, but I guess going slower does help a lot, actually, and realizing that I do have like 24 hours in a day to get done whatever I need to get done, in a way, and it doesn't have to be done right then and there, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I suppose that brings us back to what Concetta was talking about, pacing, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can try to take some breaks, and also if there is any type of, you know, condition that requires even more effort. So if, let's say, if someone needs to wear eyeglasses because of a, you know, high condition, and they're not using it, what happens is that the eyes will require more effort to, you know, to do the task, which means more energy levels, therefore higher fatigue. So by using, you know, high lenses that will actually help your, you know, your eyes, then you will require less effort to actually do the reading, for example. Or maybe sometimes even just resting the eyes and just closing them for a little bit, that helps as well. And that could be for something that you could implement in your breaks. It could be closing your eyes and maybe do a couple of breathing exercises. So they are very simple, and they actually have such a huge benefit overall in you know, the whole immune system. Also with mood, that tends to help, you know, with increasing the mood and make you feel a little bit more energized as well. They're very simple to do. And there are many as well. So that could be something that you could maybe trial.
Okay.
So I've got another question for you, because you know when you were talking about having that break, having that rest, reducing the sensory information, or just taking the deep breathing, etc. Part of me thinks we're putting our brain and body on like a standby, like we do with the television. But I'm also wondering, you know, because Emma and I were talking about the meditation and the deep breathing, etc. Is there actually something by just closing ourselves down externally that actually happens inside of our brain or our body when we're doing that?
So, I mean, it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to stop, and you don't need to move from a busy environment to going in a room that it's almost, I don't know, completely aseptic, where there is no light, nothing. Sometimes, for example, if I take myself as an example, to me, a break, it's going out for a walk in the park. There are many benefits of walking. There are many benefits shown in literature and research about being surrounded by nature. That's really helpful for our mental health and makes us feel recharged. So breaks means anything that helps you feel recharged. It could be resting if this is what you need, especially if you also feel very physically tired. Absolutely don't actually go for a walk, but maybe do something where you actually physically rest as well. But if you are mentally tired, doing something that actually it's completely different from the task that you were doing before, like going for a walk in the park, really regenerate your body, regenerate your mind. The air and oxygen, it's really helpful for the brain as well, the movement too. So these are things that could help. I have patients that just stay on the couch, lay down on the couch, eyes closed, with the TV in the background of, usually a program that they are not interested in, because they need that level of background noise that really help them to kind of disconnect in that particular moment from everything around them. Or it could be, as you mentioned, meditation. Also mindfulness. Mindfulness is something that you can do at any time during whatever task. You're cutting vegetables, you can do mindfulness. You're walking in the park, you can do mindfulness. It doesn't mean stopping or resetting everything. It's a way of actually kind of being aware of yourself or where you are in the moment and being present in the moment. Because I think that all of us can relate with the fact that we are so overwhelmed by all the things that we need to do, whether it's personal stuff, work stuff, or our own thoughts sometimes. And we are so busy thinking and doing things that sometimes we don't live in the moment, but we live in planning the next day, or, oh my God, how am I going to deal with the things that I need to do tomorrow? And the mindfulness, actually, it's a technique. And there are so many studies showing that if you practice mindfulness daily and constantly, and it can be as 5 minutes a day, no more, it can actually change the structure of the brain as well. Some of the areas of the brain tends to expand a little bit, and this is the powerful of mindfulness as well. So it can be anything. It can be listening to music. So don't think that by break you need to shut down against the world. It can be anything that actually helps you as an individual.
And just a quick plug that we have a mindfulness teacher coming to talk about mindfulness and how we can use it with CP on the 21st of February next month. So if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more specifically about mindfulness, then come and join us then. I wanted to ask something. You mentioned on one of your first slides around deciding what things you need to do versus the things that you want to do. Have you got any tips and advice in terms of, I understand that you would want to do all the things that you need to do first, but if all the things that you need to do take up all of your energy, how do you get the balance between putting in the things that you also want to do? Again, talking from the perspective of some of our younger members of our community, because that's something that I often get challenged when we talk about pacing and we talk about how to manage fatigue. You know, that balance, yes, in terms of your energy, but also that balance between want and need. And have you got any advice around that?
Well, I think that so as I said in the presentation, you need to plan also for the things that you want to do. It cannot just be about tasks that you have to, because otherwise life will be so boring as well. So we need to enjoy life. I think that again, it's about learning about prioritizing a deadline. So if you think about a younger person, let's say someone that goes to university. So you know your deadline. So for example, you know that, I don't know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday you have lectures in the morning. So that it's a must. You have to go. And so you know that maybe on these 3 days, especially if you know that, you know, lectures take a lot of energy out of you because you need to go, you need to pay attention for, you know, 2 hours and a half, 3 hours, however long it is. And then you need to go back home. That will take a lot of energy out of you cognitively, mentally, emotionally. So on those days, maybe if you want to plan something else, definitely something that doesn't require too much. It could be something that you enjoy, but where maybe you don't have to commute. It could be maybe watching a movie at home with, you know, a friend, or, you know, ordering your favorite food, so that you do something that you enjoy, that you like. And that you feel special. And then on the days where you don't have these big commitments related to university, then maybe you can do something a bit more active, actively social, outdoor. It's just really balancing the things. And then again, you know about, you know, the deadlines of your, you know, of your essays, for example. You need to plan accordingly. So if you know that you have a deadline the next week, of course, this week, that will be your, you know, your main priority. You will kind of redirect most of your energy towards the fact that it's a must. I have to do that. I cannot delegate it. And although I would love to go out with my friends, that's actually taking priority right now. I can go out with my friends maybe the following day. So it's really learning things that you cannot really postpone, where you have set deadlines, with things that actually you can move around. But I always would suggest do at least one thing that you really, really enjoy during the day, because that's what keeps us going, that keeps us motivated. And motivation is a huge element that helps us in doing things, everything really.
Fabulous. And just to pick up on delegation, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the tasks that your clients or patients have decided are a delegation task? Because I think as a community, and I'm being very stereotypical, but we often think that we have to do everything ourselves, and we have to learn to ask for help sometimes, or that we feel that it needs to be us doing things. Are there things that are common in terms of when you talk to, that you help them to delegate?
Absolutely. Think about even just planning the meal plan for the whole week. That requires so much. First of all, motivation and creativity about thinking, okay, what we are going to eat for the whole week, and making sure, you know, that we are eating a balanced diet, that we have, you know, different type of foods, etc. Planning the, you know, the meal for the week, writing down the grocery shopping, doing the grocery shopping, even cooking. These are things that you can easily delegate to other people. I'm not saying that you should never cook, but I'm saying that if you know that you have some days in your week, and this is why the planning will help you out, because you will have the overview of your week. If you know that tomorrow you have a really, really big day, you have a couple of appointments to attend, another few bits that you need to do, then really dinner can be delegate to someone else that lives with you, whether it's, you know, a parent, a partner, or a carer. it's something that could be delegated, or you know, even thinking about the cleaning of the house, or you know, the laundry. There are days where maybe you are tired, or maybe you have too much going on, and if you cannot move the particular task on a different day for whatever reason, then ask someone else to do it. Call for a cleaner if you don't have someone else that actually can take on the cleaning of the house. There is no shame in asking for help. No one, regardless of any type of disability or diagnosis, can actually achieve everything all the time. It's humanly impossible. So it's just being really honest with what we can do with our time, but also reminding ourselves that our day is not just about what we have to do. It's also about, what am I going to do to enjoy today? That I think is crucial, to keep asking and thinking about that every single day when we plan our week. Otherwise, as I said before, it's very boring and it's really not worth it.
And that actually leads me on to something that I think, Chris Picknett, you said as well, around shopping, that like going to your Tesco shop or something can sometimes be so exhausting, not only because you're shopping from a physical point of view, but because you've got all that sensory bombardment to navigate. So, you know, I suppose if we're looking at delegating, it may be one, you give someone the list, they go instead, or possibly you know, you get it delivered, so that you conserve certain, you know, issues, protecting yourself against that. I mean, is that what you would class in that delegation area?
Absolutely. You can delegate someone to go physically in the shop. You can, I mean, today we have the great advantage of literally looking at a screen and ordering what we want, and it will be delivered when we want, at the time that we want. And in terms of sensory overloading, there are a few bits that can be done. You can use headphones that actually will protect the amount of noise that it's reaching your brain. If the lighting is too strong, because that's another issue in shops and supermarkets, you can actually use your sunglasses so that you kind of reduce the amount of lighting that you are exposed to. Or you can use a baseball hat as well, so that you kind of are not overstimulated by all the things that are around you, but you can just focus on, if you kind of bend a little bit the front of the baseball hat, basically what you do, it's reducing the your visual high field. Instead of looking at everything, you just focus on a portion that it's in front of you, and that could be something that could help you to handle the overloading. And maybe look, if you can, because not everyone can, but if you can, maybe look at going at quiet times, so that you avoid also too much crowd, or people maybe, you know, after working hours, we are all rushing to go back home. We are not necessarily very nice to other people because we are tired too. So maybe if you can avoid peak hours, that could actually help you as well.
That is very, really good advice. Becky Morton, you said protection is a brilliant word. It conveys how asking for help can be positive. Thank you for that, Becky.
So I think we've got time for one last question. Does anyone have a burning question that they want to ask, or anything that they want to share? Okay, so I'm going to reiterate what Becky said. There's so many really useful tips, and also some really useful principles which make it appropriate for everyone. And I've just seen Tony's screen, so I'm going to hand the floor to Tony.
Yeah, I just I do get very frustrated when I was fatigued. I even know there were some triggers when I've done something that required excessive activities that's tiring. it's quite reassuring hearing everyone else talking about their fatigue, because it makes me realise that it's a thing that lots of people have to deal with. So yeah, it's very reassuring.
That's great to hear, Tony, and it's made me sit here and think that actually the biggest way that we can possibly help everybody with fatigue is raising awareness of what a big issue it is for the